So hello everyone, welcome to a YouTube video here. Yes, I know it's been a little bit of time. I'm just consumed on projects, got some personal stuff going on, and I had to do some jury service, which was a new thing for me. Never had to do that before, and so that took me out the office for a little bit of time. This week we are going to talk about the IPS Toolkit. I've had loads of questions in around the IPS Toolkit. So I've got my smart board up behind me. We're going to do some little drawings and I'm then going to just show you the IPS Toolkit. I've decided to stop redacting some stuff. I'm sure that once people see this, they're going to try and start copying it. Which is why I was being a bit cagey about some of the features. However, full transparency, I think some of the software vendors have got a little bit nervous about what it is I'm trying to achieve with the IPS Toolkit, hence today's video. I have shown this toolkit to all of my customers, been using it now consistently on training this year, and the feedback has been tremendous. People absolutely love the IPS Toolkit. So let's talk about the IPS Toolkit today. It's a huge tool. It's got an awful lot going on. Now, the reality is it came out of a need. It came out of this is a tool that I would use. This is a tool that my customers would use because they have challenges. And whilst all of my customers are different, they all have common challenges. And the IPS Toolkit came out of that need. Why? I could see a gap in the market for a tool. You know, one of the questions I get asked all of the time is this a replacement for my CSDB? And I'm going to show you a little drawing in a minute. And the answer is no, it's not a replacement for your CSDB. Actually, what this does is it elevates your CSDB. It actually helps you get the most out of your CSDB. And some software vendors have got very nervous about what this tool is going to be. I believe that the CSDB market is saturated. I believe that the CSDB market has some really good CSDBs. And this tool can help you get the best out of it. In fact, I've had a conversation with probably the two leading CSDB suppliers in the market, and they want to integrate the IPS Toolkit for their customers with the TDW IPS Toolkit for their CSDB. And I'm going to show you some stuff on here. Now, it's much bigger than S1000D, and you're going to see that in a minute, and I'm going to tell you why it's bigger than that. But let's try and explain to you over here on this slide. So if I just move this over a little bit so it doesn't trigger my OCD. So on the smart board here, you can see that those of you who've done my training, you'll recognize this slide. And often when we have a requirement, now this is from my wider IPS training, so let's not worried too much about terms and terminology on here, but let's just say in a scenario where we have an S1000D requirement, often we jump straight to buying a database or a CSDB, okay? And if that's your want or your need, then that's up to you. I don't have a problem with that. However, these CSDBs in this particular zone here, they assume that a lot of our analysis, our decisions, our project configurations, etc., have already been agreed and defined. So the assumption here is that our analysis has already been done, and we can then send that analysis into the CSDB. This is not always the case, and it's often projects don't know the type of analysis that we need to do, and they don't understand the relationship of the analysis that we might need to perform. And so what we want to do is we want to get clarity, remove confusion. You can see all of these negative bits across the life cycle here. And what we want to do is we want to execute our project in a controlled way and in a way that makes sense for the organization, and we'll talk about that here shortly, and how we can actually elevate the use of things like a CSDB. So let me show you, I'll talk about it, and then because I don't want to show, because I do have some areas in here that are customer data. So let's talk about one particular example. I don't know whether I could do it really quickly here. If I add a sheet, yes, look at that. So if I add a sheet, so if we think about an S1000D project, okay, and so we're talking about S1000D. It's the most popular. It's out there being used. Everyone seems to be using it, and some with different levels of success, etc. And what we have at the bottom here is we have our actual project itself, but we also have a bunch of analysis, etc., that we perform up here. Sorry, I write like a doctor sometimes. And here you know that we have high-level policy guidance. So a couple of projects that I'm supporting at the moment are using def stands. So, and one of them is in part 1, one of them's in part 3. These are high-level policy, what we want and how we will contract for our S1000D deliverables. And one of the problems with these is not only have we spend a lot of time defining what we want and how we want it, etc., to try and speed up the adoption of S1000D, this takes time still at the project level for us to actually use and implement. So the IPS Toolkit, we have packages here that we can import directly into the project, which means that we're passing all of the definitions from MIL standards, from the Canadian business rules, from the Australian business rules, from the UK, from the German Bundeswehr style guides, or whatever they call them. We can pass those rules to the project, which means that we have here on my screen, you can see we have the Global Governance Hub. I can click on it, but I can't go in here. I can go here though. Here you can see that I can create a global governance package that is all of those business rules that we would decide at the policy level that can go inside our package that I've just talked about, and we can pass that to our S1000D project. Now the program it's got a running start. It knows the decisions it needs to make. It knows the decisions that it doesn't need to make, because we've said that we're not using certain things. I'm going to show you how we do that in here anyway. So does it replace the CSDB? No. Does it help speed up the adoption of IPS S-Series S1000D? Absolutely. Does it allow us to make joined up decisions? Absolutely. So let's just have a look at the dashboard here really quickly. Right, this is a TDW license. You can see it here. I get access to absolutely everything. Why? Because I developed it. And so now you can see all of the tools that are available to us in here. And now you can see what it is I'm actually building. So one of the customers that I've shown this to recently was absolutely blown away by the level of effort that's gone into this. We're going to look at the S1000D Studio today. We're not going to look at any of the other stuff. I might talk about Data Spine and S-Series Connect in some upcoming videos later on in the month or over the year. But that global governance hub there that I talked about, we've got AI governance, how we can use that as well. So now if I just come into S1000D, because you can see that now all of these cards, as we call all of these studios, have sub areas that we can use inside our particular project. So here you can see we have information code lookup, standard numbering system lookup. That spec view is that that free view that I've made available. Here you can now take a project from your CSDB and open it inside free view. Publication Studio allows us to drag, drop, build publication modules that we can pass to our CSDB, and they can then publish. DMRL Studio is the traditional IPS toolkit. So those of you who are in the old Mind Manager toolkit that we used to have, you will get access to the DMRL Studio. If you want access to all the other stuff, then you need to come to me and speak to me about that. We have things in here like CIR Factory. We have things like Visualization, Applicability Studio, and a process module builder as well. Maybe I'll show that in an upcoming video. And an author toolkit. So the author toolkit, for example, we have the ability to pass data directly via APIs to an editing environment, so we can use our Brex modules and those kind of things. So if I look at, this is what I'll look at today, is the S1000D Governance Layer. So now we've gone from kind of global governance, that quick image that I just drew for you, down into the project level governance. Okay, so I'm just going to open a project. Clearly I've got some customer data in here that I can't share with you on this particular project, but here is a project that I have built. Well, all of them are projects that I've built, but this one is one that I'll go through with you today. So here you can see that my Bulwark APC here that I built is connected to the MOD Business Rules Contracting for Technical Publications Part 3 Pack 2. So that global governance hub where we created all of the rules at the high level, and now we can give all of those to our projects. I've just imported that into this project. So what does that mean? I'll come back to this in a bit. But here you can see import. I can import a business rules definition pack. And that business rules definition pack, here you can see, has dragged it into my project, which now means all of the business rules decisions that I need to make, you can see some are telling me what's not used, some are what's been accepted by our global policy. Policy is identified, project decision, policy and project decisions can also be identified. So on this dashboard, what's going on is it's giving me a status update of what we're connected to, how we connect to it, and you know, here I've got an SNS factory. I'm going to explain that in a minute. External DMRL Studio, so we can connect the project to a definitions or a scoping of our project, and a tech docs management plan. So you remember I said earlier on that CSDBs assume that a lot of analysis has been done. It doesn't talk about a lot of the stuff here that we need to have and we need to define to make good, clear decisions for us to be able to then use something like the CSDB and then move on into our production and to our delivery. So I'm going to go through all of these, some of them in a little bit more detail, some of them a bit easier. So here I can connect the tech docs management plan. So this is a set of tools that I've just put together and says, how will we do, how will we do, how will we do? And then we can connect those to our BRDPs if there is a clear relationship, which means now we have joined up thinking and joined up discussions around how we will actually not only do the business of technical publications, but how we will define how things will look in our particular S1000D and wider technical publications environment. Here, because I've connected this in this particular project to DefStan 00601 Part 3, which is the business rules guidance for land systems from the UK MOD, all I've done is I've gone through the DefStans, because I'm supporting several clients right now using the def stands, and I've created those packs. You know, I could create the same packs for Australia, for Canada, for the US military, etc., etc., and it would all work exactly the same way. So, but I can update. I can now import an update package. So if the def stand changes, I can release a change pack. The change pack will be updated, and what will happen is that the tool, the IPS Toolkit, says this has changed in the def stand, and this is the impact it has on your project. You can accept or reject those changes, and then it will update the decisions that you need to make on your particular project. So now not only have we got the project level alignment, now we've got the policy level alignment as well at our governance layer. So stakeholder management, clearly very simple. How do we do that? But now, because we have a stakeholder management and we're using things like cage codes, our BRDPs will automatically pick this up. So now, yes, we can put stuff in here and the BRDPs will automatically ingest these. Document management, I don't think I need to explain what's going on here. You can see I've created a report. I'm going to show you that in a minute. A guidance builder is a tool that I've developed that we've got our BRDPs, we've got our priorities, we've got our severities, we've got our definitions, we've got our global policies, we've got our project level. Now we can create a guidance document based on all of that definition, etc., that we've created, and we can export it to a JSON file, which means I can give it to somebody else who's using the IPS Toolkit. I can export it to a Word file, so somebody may want to read it, add some comments to it, etc. I can publish it to PDF. I can export it to a BR doc. I can create a HTML5 view of it as well. So, which means that something I'm not going to go in today is that we can put this to the IPS Toolkit comment cloud, which means that we can publish it to a local web server and we can give people a URL and they can add comments to all of the decisions, etc., that we have made. So now we're capturing all of those for the project. So this is nothing more than a tool to help us build those guidance documents. I have a stack of short codes that I've built that will extract information from areas of here. I can add things like a tip if I want to put a tip in here, important or a warning or something along those lines. And I have something called AI rewrite, and based on the persona or the audience, etc., that I want to use, I can rewrite a sentence. So, you know, if I'm working on a project that's got, you know, multinational partners, etc., we may want to write something that is a little bit more plain English or something along those lines. So this is all running off a local AI. Here you can see I'm running Olama in here. So what's happening is that everything that I'm doing AI related is on my local machine. I'm not sending anything to the cloud or anything along those lines. And one thing that we will talk about is that in IPS Forge, which is another tool that I do, which is more for lifecycle data engineering, we can do what is known as ground our project. So the lifecycle data engineer will train the AI on the parameters for our project. And that's a completely different video that I'll do at some point in the future to show you how we can ground a IPS project, or in this case an S1000D project. But so that's you know, straightforward. The BRDPs, so here you can see again imported from. So we imported this in this particular case from DefStan. I can change my BRDP numbering conventions if I want to, and also in here now you can see that we have a stack of tags. So what does this look like? So here you can see, if I go to here, you can see that it's pulled across from the stakeholder management cage codes that we might want to use on our project, but I also have an AI wizard that now asks us to add extra ones if we want to use them. This means that we can not only add this later on to our Brex modules, it means that if we start trying to add definitions later on that don't exist in our governance layer, we can flag it as a particular problem. So not used is coming from here, you can see as policy. Policy has decided that we're not using something, so that's at the dev stand level. We can also have policy and project decisions that we've made. Let's just look at how do we make some of these decisions. I'm just going to write any old nonsense in here, people, so don't judge me. So if I was connected to, or I had a link to an area of the Tech Docs management plan over here, the BRDP would pick it up and would allow me then to build a rule around that. I've already shown you that we have the AI side here. We can, if we wanted to, reference another BRDP. So I'm just going to throw anything in here and say that, we have other BRDPs. Now, what's that doing? I'll show you later on what that's particularly, what that's doing. We can also kick the can down the road and say that we'll do this later on, but we could also throw in a priority level if we wanted to as well. For this particular BRDP. So not only is it becoming a governance layer, it's becoming a prioritization layer and a project management layer as well. I'll show you some more of that here shortly. Now, decision intelligence is I can turn on decision intelligence for this here. This probably doesn't make sense for cage codes, but now I can start documenting some of the, what is it I want, which cage codes are we going to use, etc. So my question in here, why this matters, data meaning or ownership, I'm just throwing any old nonsense in here. And we could say complexity here is 0, cost is close to 1, governance burden, supplier impact is higher, AI readiness may help us build some AI indexes in the future. And now you can see that I can start creating a decision intelligence. And why does that make sense? Because later on, I'll show you the decision intelligence insights, which now we have a risk register, we have life cycle decision management, all those kind of things. AI rewrite, if I put a load of old nonsense in here, I can have an AI rewrite based on my persona, and it will rewrite my statement for me, for my target audience. You don't have to have AI enabled to use the IPS Toolkit. And if I add in here a call out and I want to have an example, the AI example now becomes available to me. And based on the grounding of the project, the rule that I've written, the context of the project, it will now develop an example for me to say that I can include that in my guidance builder, in my guidance document. So now the end user can see, all right, okay, I&O, don't use I&O when we're in these kind of contexts, etc. It will build an example for me. Still training the engine on how to do that in a nice and meaningful way. So now you can see that as we start building through all of these decisions, you can see that we now have this governance layer, this control layer, not only at a Excel spreadsheet layer that you can download with S1000D, but also in a meaningful way so that we have all of these joined up decisions. Schemas, information codes, SNS. So these are what we can decide that we're going to use, but SNS is now, I have externalized it from an S1000D project. The S1000D project is still talking to it, but it's now in the SNS studio, because when you're in a wider IPS project, remember that digital spine I showed you earlier on? I'll do another video on digital spine. now we can connect or use the SNS, the LCNs and the breakdown element identifiers, and we can connect those so we can start making what is now called the digital backbone. So we can start connecting all our activities to that. So the SNS Studio has been pulled out because one person might be building the SNS Studio or the SNS definitions for this project, but that will be used in 2,000, 3,000, 6,000. It could be used wherever, and it shouldn't be owned, in my opinion, by one specification. It should be owned by a discipline that's aligning the breakdown elements, the SNS, the LCNs, the PLM structures, etc., which is what that other studio does for us. It helps us drag, drop, and put things together. Attributes, we can define the attributes. Where they are blanked out is because our BRDPs, etc., they may already be used, or we are not going to be using them. The AI governance layer, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because AI is clearly something that I'm spending a lot of time teaching clients with at the moment. And how do we put human in the loop? And how do we ground an IPS project? How do we use AI and AI agents in a meaningful way that elevate how we can use governance layers, but also speed up how we can implement things like the S-Series, S1000D, those kind of things. Tools and visualizations, again, I'm not going to go, but these, let me show you this one really quickly. So here you can see now I created that rule and I said that it references another rule. And now you can see that we have these rules definitions. So those rules definitions are helping us make decisions, but then also see the impact if we change a decision, or so now if we decide we're going to change one of those other rules, it will flag to us and say, oh, now you need to verify that this other rule is still good, etc. So we have these wizards and gap analysis. I'm definitely not going to go into all of that here today. Like the SNS, a project scope, we can connect to a DMRL studio, which now the DMRL can be built external to this S1000D governance layer, and we can connect to our 2000M, we can connect to our MTA Studio. I don't know if I've talked about MTA Studio. So how do we do our FMEAs and those kind of things, and then develop our MTAs, and then how we can connect the MTAs via S-Series Connect, so that S-Series, 2000M, 6000, etc. all talk to each other, and we can see the analysis that's being carried out and defined in other domains. Joined up thinking and the way that we want to work. Hub. So Hub is where a lot of this stuff is allowing us to share and import. So I showed you earlier on about importing a business rules definition pack. I can import a TDW Exchange pack, which means that, I might be working on my machine here in the office, or I might be working on my laptop. I can export this project, put it on my laptop, and continue working while I'm away. I can import a grounding file. I can create a business rules definition pack, but on top of that, I can create what is known as a CSDB profile package. And what does that mean? So that slide I showed you earlier on, this one, when I showed you this, and I talked about the CSDBs that we might have at this level here, they will all have different methodologies of importing data. And so I'm working with a couple of customers right now who are using some CSDBs. They want to use the ITP toolkit, or the IPS toolkit, sorry, and they want to move data from here into their CSDBs. And I've already had a conversation with one of the leading CSDB vendors who has said that they want to have a deeper integration from this toolkit into their CSDB, because they can see their customers would benefit from using the IPS toolkit. But because I want the toolkit to be agnostic of CSDB, we can create CSDB export packages, and you can pass it to whichever, I'm not going to start naming CSDBs, but you can then just pass your definitions, your DMRLs, your SNS files, etc., all of your decisions from here directly into that CSDB in the format that they want it and they need it. I've talked about grounding here. I can create a report, and that report allows me to, I'm not going to do it because you can see it here that you get a little preview as well, but it will try and save to a project folder that will show some of my customer data. I can create an Excel, I can create a HTML, I can do what is known as a decision intelligence. So you remember that decision intelligence I showed you earlier? So decision intelligence here is, now we're starting to build a risk register, and you can see that we have these future constraints, we have supply chain impact, and now we start getting a risk register that we can start looking at the decision that we made, go back to that, and we can update it and try and reduce the risk on the project, etc. And notes and actions, easy. One thing that's not in this version that I have built is how to host and document a technical documentation meeting, how to have these governance meetings, how to decide who's doing what, when they're doing it, etc., those kind of things. And we also have the ability here, I will have to blur some of this out because this is proper TDW IP. You can see that in here right now, you can see that we can now see the S1000D process, and you can see that we have all of these studios that we can open directly for the particular project, and we can also add and access TDW checklists. So because over the years I've developed an awful lot of checklists, those are then added to your particular project. I'm not going to show any of the TDW process stuff at the bottom because it's way more detailed than this one. And you can see that, if we want to now control our project in a meaningful way, define our project in a meaningful way, now we have the tools to do it. So if I come back to the main dashboard here, that's what the S1000D side of stuff is. And yes, there's some stuff in there that I'm not going to show today because it's just too detailed to go into today. But you can see that there's that data spine I talked about and how we can build an SNS factory. And the SNS factory is something that we can centralize those activities. S-Series Connect is about how we can then connect all of these activities. They talk to each other. One thing changes in one domain, we get a flag of how it changes across the entire system, if you like, the entire S-Series or IPS. It's not purely S-Series. We've also got other standards and specifications that we support in here as well. And 10,000i, the 10,000i dashboard is exactly the same as the S1000D one, as is 3,000, 2,000, 6,000. So yeah, that's it. That's what the IPS Toolkit is doing. So it's not out to replace your existing tools. It's to elevate the use of your existing tools. I don't care particularly what your existing toolkit is or what your IPS toolkits are. What I'm all about is how do we make decisions and how do we govern those decisions through life, and any kind of impact analysis of changes, or how do we make sure that all of our decisions all talk to each other. That's it. Anyway, there you go. That's the IPS Toolkit. Sorry, I've been away for a little while. When I say that's the IPS Toolkit, you've seen one part of the IPS Toolkit there, particularly around S1000D. The tool is actually designed as well that If the S-series specs change, or the XML schemas change, or 10,000i adds a whole bunch of other rules, we don't have to keep updating the software. It's just a bunch of configuration files that we create, we make available off our website. You download them. It's now ready to use the latest and greatest versions of the specifications. Anyway, that's me. That's what we're about. And if you want any more information about that, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can either send me a message through, I don't know if YouTube has a message capability, but get me on LinkedIn. You can get me on techdataworld.com if you want more information on this. I don't know whether I've said it already, but the existing IPS Toolkit users, you will get DMRL Studio, which will be how you can then import your maps across from the old Mine Manager into DMRL Studio. If you want to upgrade to the bigger and better IPS Toolkit, that's a conversation we can have. Otherwise, that's it. There you have it. That's what I've been working on. Everybody I've shown this to really like it. And yeah, stay tuned, because we've got some exciting stuff going on with some vendors that are we're gonna at TDW Live, we're gonna show taking data from the IPS Toolkit and loading it into CSDBs and those kind of things, and using MTAs across the the data chain, etc. So there you go. Anyway, I think I've rambled enough for today, and yeah, speak to you soon. You know where I'm at if you need me. Bye bye now.